All right, welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be friends of the show, Elie, Deglaoui, and Bruce Veliz. Together, we're going to unveil our official NBA season predictions, going over our standings predictions for both the Eastern and Western Conference. Should be a ton of fun, so let's just get into the episode. All right, joining the show now is Bruce Velez and Elie Deglaoui to discuss our official 2025-2026 NBA standings predictions. How you doing today, boys?
Good, man. Thanks for having us on again.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Awesome time to talk about the NBA season with you boys, and I can't wait to dive in and get into these predictions.
Yes, sir. It should be a ton of fun. So we're just going to start off with the East, and we're going to go 15 through 1, then go to the West, and then finally conclude with the community rankings that you guys submitted on social media. So should be a ton of fun. All right, we can move ahead to the West, and going back to the bottom now, who did you guys have as your 15th ranked team in the Western Conference?
Well, I hope I'm not the only one with this placing, but I have the Utah Jazz over at 15th here in the West. Austin Ainge is coming in as their new general manager. He says at the press conference that they're going to try to do their best, and then they ultimately, like I alluded to earlier, trade away Colin Sexton for basically nothing, and Yusuf Nurkic, trade away John Collins away for slow-mo and Kevin Love and a first round pick. They waive Jordan Clarkson, and they're completely going to invest in their youth movement. Now, this is not a bad thing for the Utah Jazz. I think this is something that they should do because as we all know, with Lauri Markkanen, their best player, he does not fit into with their timeline. And I do think before this season, with their other draft picks, because they were kind of outside the lottery or had a lot of abundance of picks, they didn't have that true number one star. So I think this season, getting Ace Bailey, trying to invest in him, getting a guy in Walter Clayton Jr., who I think is a more confident shot creator and shot maker from what we've seen from him with Florida in March Madness tournament, comparative to guys like Keontae George and Isaiah Collier, who I still do like, but I think is just a little bit more confident than I think is going to be a vital piece. Obviously, there's still the question about the Walker Kessler extension. Will he get extended? Will he get traded? I'm sure that saga will continue on to the season. Similar to Lauri Markkanen, I would not be shocked if they moved off Lauri though and completely embraced this tank regardless of the season, and finally bottomed out and tried to get the number one overall pick, seemingly what they tried to do last year.
Yeah, I also got Utah. I mean, I feel like there's not much for me to add. This team stinks. They don't really have a lot going for them. Like, yeah, I mean, they got young pieces. I'm exaggerating a little bit. I think that they have some young pieces that, um, I guess should help long term. But if we're talking about this season, I don't think they've really shown anything to prove that they should be any type of threat in the West. I am interested to see what happens with Laurie Markkinen. I am of the belief that they will eventually trade him, whether it's by the trade deadline or it's next offseason. I think it's going to happen. I do think ultimately they will commit to Walker Kessler, but at least for the time being, as it stands, I think they're going to be the worst team in the West, probably potentially in the whole NBA too. And I just feel like there's nothing really that's happened for me to change my mind.
Yeah, I think if I look at this in sort of tiers, Utah is in its own tier because they're just so much worse than every team in the West, quite frankly. And I think that's kind of where they want to be. I mean, you look at, I believe they bought out Jordan Clarkson. They didn't get much in return for Colin Sexton, as Bruce said. So, I mean, I feel like they're just completely bottoming out. I guess I'm a little bit more excited to watch them this year because I think they're just gonna totally embrace the youth movement. And I do like their rookie class that's coming in. I think Ace Bailey is a guy that he's been sensational in preseason, so I'm excited to watch him. I'm excited to watch Walter Clayton as well. Who knows? I think they're possibly going to trade Markkinen. I think it sort of depends on the offers. So if they get a really good offer, they'll move off of him. At the same time, I think they're the 15th seed either way. So who knows what's the point of trading a guy if you're still the worst team in the West? But yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm just excited to see how this young team develops. Probably not going to be watching them a ton, but just some of the young guys are intriguing to me. Then a guy like Taylor Hendricks coming back from injury, I'm excited to see what he can do. Bryce Sensabaugh has had some nice moments, so yeah, I mean, yeah, just I'm excited to see the young guys. I think they're going to be really, really bad. Like less than 20 wins. So I don't think there's a ton to talk about here. So yeah, we can move ahead to number 14, which hopefully we'll have some different answers for.
I hope so, and I hope Joe Dumars doesn't watch this podcast because I'm going to rate the Pelicans here coming in at 14th, and that's right, Joe Dumars. You should have not have traded that unprotected first round pick to move up 10 slots to take Derek Queen, regardless of how much you liked the pick. You shouldn't have done that. The Pelicans, though, Zion, I will say, does look like a different animal, does look like a different beast, could be something that could change this course. But with his injury history in the past, the Pelicans front office just seeming to be a mess, them having an abundance of guards and wings that seemingly can do the same thing, just doesn't really make much sense for me. I do like some pieces on this team. I think Herb Jones is a great value defender. Trey Murphy is severely underrated as a scorer and should be benefacted by getting a trade so he can showcase that ability within these teams. But the Jordan Poole acquisition, I get it was to move off some salary, but with drafting Jeremiah Fears, having Jose Alvarado, even with DeJounte Murray having torn ACL, it just still puts a little bit of a clouded judgment over their guard room with them not really having many wings. You look at this wing rotation, I believe it is just Sadiq Bey as their wing rotation after their starter and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy want to call it in there. So I don't know. I don't think that they're going to have enough depth. Yves Missy is nice, but the Pelicans, man, I just think they're too much of a mess. So I'm having them at 14th.
Yeah, this is actually where I've got the Pelicans too, which kind of stinks. I want to be higher on them than I am because I'm all aboard the Zion Williamson hype train. I mean, I don't know. I guess I have been for a long time. I really feel like in my gut, this is finally the year he's gonna be Zion Williamson, and we're gonna see what he can really bring to the table. But until that happens, I mean, obviously they've got DeJounte Murray out for probably half the season at least, and yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm kind of iffy on the Jordan Poole acquisition too. I just feel like that team doesn't really know its identity right now. They have a lot of interesting pieces that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Trey Murphy. Obviously Zion Williamson, like I said, is a player that I'm very high on, and I mean they have an interesting team, I guess, but I don't think it's going to lead to much success this year.
Yeah, it's funny. I had the Pelicans for 14 for a while when I was first doing this list. I ended up talking myself out of it, and I got the Sacramento Kings here at number 14. Um, as currently constructed, I do not think this is the second worst team in the West. I'm just very on board with the idea that they're going to blow it up, especially after the Keegan Murray injury. I know it's like kind of, seems like a kind of a minor injury, but he's going to miss about the first month of the season, and that first month of the season is truly a gauntlet for this Sacramento Kings team. And if they're sitting with like a, I don't know, let's say like a 5-15 record through 20 games or something, I don't see a world where they don't just decide to blow it up. They still have all of their picks. And the big thing is when I look at this Kings team compared to the Pelicans and the Suns, who are sort of viewed in that same tier in many people's eyes, I just think they're more incentived to bottom out because they do have their draft pick this year and they do have more of their future picks. So I think the Kings are gonna sort of take a nosedive at some point. I mean, right now, like I said, as currently constructed, I think this is a team closer to the play in the bottom of the West. But I think they're gonna trade at least one of Sabonis, DeRozan, and Levine. Who knows? Maybe they end up trading all three. That wouldn't personally shock me, but yeah, weird team, weird roster. Like, even though they do have some talent on offense, I don't totally love how it all meshes together. And defensively, it's just a total mess. They brought in Westbrook like an hour before we recorded, so that should be interesting, I guess. I think they upgraded their point guard room with him and Schroeder this offseason, so I guess that's nice. But yeah, not very high on this team, especially in the West. I think they're just going to embrace another rebuild, unfortunately. So yeah, who did you guys have at number 3?
So this is where I had the Sacramento Kings, and to go off that point, I want to give us a little bit of an update with Sham saying that Sabonis, DeRozan, and Zach LaVine all advocated for the Kings to sign Russell Westbrook. I'm a little shocked by that because they're advocating for a guy either to blow their team up or to eventually get traded by the trade deadline, I do think, because I don't know if this pairing is going to last for the entire season. Like you said, Eamon, just in this gauntlet of a dominant Western Conference, this core is just not stable. I know Sabonis made the claims that they should go and get a point guard after trading away De'Aaron Fox last year. So going and get Schroeder, going and get Westbrook does make sense. But I think this is going to hinder the ability for guys like Malik Monk, who seemingly has a negative trade value, who they were trying to move for Jonathan Kuminga in a deal for him with the Warriors. Also a guy in Devin Carter, who I'm a little bit high on his upside still as a defensive product. So I do think for this Kings team, this is a little bit weak. Their front court room also, they traded away Valanciunas, brought in Dario Saric and Drew Eubanks. Maybe they have some confidence in some of their younger guys in their rotation, but behind Domantas Sabonis, I still think this is a weak front court. You mentioned the defensive inefficiencies with this team. They don't have a defensive wing besides the one that they just drafted in E. Clifford behind Keegan Murray, and with Keegan Murray being out, that's going to be a lot of command on a guy in E. Clifford, who's going to be taking that role and playing multiple positions for this team as well. And they also fumbled the contract extension of Keon Ellis. So with all of that being said, the Kings here are just a little bit lower. I don't think they have many expectations in a Gauntlet Western Conference.
Yeah, this is actually another one where I've gone back and forth between this team and the team I have above. I feel like you guys actually kind of talked me into this being Sacramento. I'm not really a fan of the Russell Westbrook acquisition. I do believe that Westbrook can still contribute. Like, I don't think he's as washed up as I think a lot of other people are saying he is. I mean, he finished 7th in 6th Man of the Year voting in each of the last 2 seasons with 2 different teams. I don't think that's nothing. And I also feel like he's a guy at this point who knows what his role is. He buys into his role. Like, I actually think he can contribute still. I just don't think Sacramento's that spot for him. I feel like the pairing of him and DeMar and Zach LaVine is very just wonky. Like, I don't know. I feel like because I don't know. I just don't really see that working out long term. I don't know if I necessarily buy into the idea that they're going to make a big trade during the season. Not saying that they shouldn't. I just don't know if they will. I don't know if they're going to be able to trade Levine. I still think they're going to keep Sabonis around. I'm sure they'll figure that out. So, I mean, I got Sacramento in this spot. Either way, I don't think they're going to be a play-in team. I feel like this is one of those teams where maybe it's a lot more fun on paper than it's really going to be, but I don't think it's going to lead to a lot of wins. So, I don't know. I just don't really see them doing too much this season.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. Here's where I have New Orleans. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on it, but that trade was just insane, giving up your own first round pick. And when you look at the rookies they brought in, I do really like Derek Queen. I do really like Jeremiah Fears, but they're not guys that are ready to contribute immediately, in my opinion. I think they need a little bit more time to develop, especially Fears. He's a smaller guard. And then Queen, I think adjusting to NBA defense will be difficult for him. So yeah, I don't love it. I overall just don't love this team's depth, shooting, and defense, and I think that those are really 3 big problems for them. Who knows if you get a fully healthy season of Zion? He's looking good. He looks like he's in the best shape of his career. It could be something. At the same time, even though he looks like he's in great shape right now, I have a hard time believing that he's going to play like 60 plus games, and I think that's going to be a problem for this Pelicans team. I think they're going to be a little bit better than last year, just because I can't see them being that injury riddled. Because last year I think they dealt with the most injuries in the league. And yeah, I do like Trey Murphy. I do really like Herb Jones as well. So solid there. I don't like the Jordan Poole trade a ton. So yeah, I mean this team, they're in a tough spot without their first round pick, and yeah, I just don't see them being very good in an ultra competitive Western Conference like you guys. So yeah, who'd you guys have right above them at number 12?
So this is where it gets a little bit hard for me because personally I could see all 12 of these teams making the play-in, which is just crazy to say with the Western Conference, but with it being so deep. Unfortunately, the team that's going to come up short is the Portland Trailblazers just because they are just lacking that star still. I do think guys like Denny Abida and Shaden Sharp could reach that potential for this team and be that team's number one option. We still have yet to see with the Portland Trailblazers who that guy is and who can take over for them. So that leaves me with some complications. I do like the additions, obviously, of Drew Holiday being that veteran presence. I think he's going to help Scoot Henderson a lot. And with Scoot getting an injury to start the year, I think it's some great point guard insurance for the Blazers. But I don't necessarily know how much of a long-term fit he is. Similarly, they have probably the worst contract in the NBA at this point in Jeremy Grant, who is maybe should be starting with his veteran presence, but with his ability to be on the court and with having guys like Tumani Kamara and Denny Avdija doesn't really make sense for them. So that puts them in a little bit of a hole. But their front court is very inspiring. They just drafted Yang Hansen, obviously the pick that shocked the world. And then they have Donovan Clingan from last year. And I'm excited to see how that front court can develop. But with them still being young in a gauntlet Western Conference, they do come up a little bit short and fall in 12th for me.
Yeah, I feel like Portland is another very weird team to judge. They have a very interesting mix of young players and veterans. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of weird to me that Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant and Scoot Henderson are all on the same team. Obviously, Dame probably won't be playing this season, but he's still on the team anyway. I am excited to see what Drew Holiday can do there. I mean, I feel like you don't trade for Drew Holiday and keep him around to not still kind of compete a little bit. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to go on a deep playoff run or anything, but that's actually one of the reasons that I have Portland a little bit higher. From This is a team that I kind of feel weird putting a little bit low, but this is where I have the Phoenix Suns. I think the Suns are a team that, I mean, we all know how much of a mess they've been over the past couple of seasons. And I mean, trading Kevin Durant is something they had to do. I think all things considered, they got a solid return. Jalen Green is going to be out for a little bit, and who knows how that team's going to look. But I do like the Mark Williams acquisition, and I'm actually really excited to see what this team's going to look like now that it's Devin Booker's again. Like, it's just strictly Devin Booker's team, and we know what he can do, and I'm very excited to see that. It's been a little bit since it's really been his team. I think they could be better than where I have them. This is kind of like what Bruce was saying. Like, the 12 seed up, I feel like is pretty debatable in a lot of different areas. I just feel like with Jalen Green's injury and with obviously not having Kevin Durant anymore and just the concerns that they have, I guess, with really generating offense outside of Devin Booker, I think because of all of that, I'm still going to have them a little bit lower, but I could see them being higher than where I'm putting them.
Yeah, my condolences, Bruce House of the Suns here at number 12. Kind of weird offseason. They did have to trade Kevin Durant and they did have to kind of waive Bradley Beal. But yeah, last year they were tied with Portland for that like 11-12 seed. So I just can't see them like moving up based off the offseason that they had. Really, really don't like the fit between Devin Booker and Jalen Green. I think that's another thing that just kind of holds me back with this team. I did like what they did drafting Kaman Wallawatch at 10. I thought that was an absolute steal, and frankly, I was surprised that he fell to them. I also liked drafting Rasheer Fleming and Kobe Brea. So I do kind of like some of their young talent they have managed to get, and then the guy like Oso last year, and then Ryan Dunn as well. So I do like some of their young players, despite not having really a ton of draft capital. At the same time, I just don't know, like, especially like a Malawatch, like I don't know how ready he is to contribute. I think it's nice that they were able to bolster their center depth, but I am a little bit concerned that it sort of hinges on a rookie in Malawatch and then a guy who's never proven that he can stay healthy in Mark Williams. I think it's going to be better than it was last season because it was just truly awful last season. And then I think their defense overall, like wise, will be a little bit better, especially getting a guy like Dylan Brooks. I just still don't think it's going to be anywhere close to like league average. So those are sort of the concerns for me. I think they were able to edge the Pelicans for me based on I trust Booker a lot more than I trust Zion, quite frankly. I like their depth a little bit more in shooting. So they get the nod over the Pelicans, but I do see them sort of at the top of this like 12 through 14 tier for me. But yeah, who did you guys have at number 11?
So I had a team that's probably going to shock a lot of people, but in the West, we have seen teams, one team specifically that has been, talked about to be a pretty solid team, but always runs into injuries. And I feel like this is a common occurrence that we see with it being a gauntlet. So that's where I have the Memphis Grizzlies. I do think they are a lot better than the 11th seed, and I want to preface that. But I do think starting off the season with Jaren Jackson already dealing with an injury, John Morant already dealing with an injury, losing Desmond Bane, your third scorer, and having to invest so much into those young talents. They have been able to in the past with those great two-way players blossoming in GG Jackson, Vince Williams, Jay Huff, Scottie Pippen Jr., etc. But I do have that concern. Obviously, they addressed the point guard room, bringing in Ty Jerome. They will have that little bit of lenience there to help out with Ja being out. But without Zach Edey as well in that front court to start the year, which I just remembered, it's going to be very difficult for a team that loves to run double big and play with that identity to kind of thrive with that. So ultimately, I do think the Grizzlies could be better, and I think should be better than the 11th seed. But with injuries already starting to plague them, I do think they will fall a little bit short this season.
I honestly really think that's a good point because that was something I factored in with Memphis too. It feels like every year for the past 2 years or so, we've kind of had these high expectations for the Grizzlies, but injuries to Ja or Jaren Jackson or Desmond Bain or whoever, or back when they had a Marcus Smart, like it felt like injuries kind of lowered their ceiling, and I definitely could see that happening again. I still put them a little bit higher, but that was definitely something I really thought about. But for me, my 11 seed is going to be Portland. I think Portland is this is another team that I think could be a little bit better than kind of where I'm putting them. I just feel like their team is still maybe too young to really take that next step. I mean, obviously adding Drew Holiday, kind of like what I was saying earlier, that's not a nothing move. I think even though Drew Holiday, as we saw last year, definitely isn't at his peak anymore, he can still contribute. He can still help the team on both sides of the ball on the court. And I think he'll also be very valuable off the court for young guys like Scoot Henderson, especially. So I like that team a lot. And I don't think their end of the season last year was necessarily a fluke. I do think that's a team that can string together some wins. It just comes down to I think every team I have above them is better. And I just think in the context of a full season, I just don't know if I have that trust in them right now to make a type of playoff run.
Yeah, no, I think both of those picks make a lot of sense. I'm a little bit higher on Portland than consensus. We'll get to them in a bit, but yeah, I like Bruce had the.
Malcolm Brogdon just retired.
I did see that. Yeah, that's crazy.
My bad. I just saw that.
Yo, what?
What just happened?
I saw that. I was in shock. Yeah.
My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just like, whoa. How did we were just talking about him?
I
We were
know.
just talking about
I
him.
knew he was on a non-guaranteed deal and he wasn't performing well in preseason, but yeah, shocked that he retired. I mean, he was sixth man of the year like in the 23 season. So
And not even
crazy.
oh, you know what? It's definitely an injury related thing
It
because that
is,
guy's been
yeah.
plagued for years. But I'm like, he's only how old? I mean, he's about to be 33 in December. You know what? I guess he was a pretty old rookie though.
Yeah,
Because
he
I'm
was.
thinking in my mind, like he hasn't even been in the league for 10 years, but I guess that
Yeah,
makes sense.
he was 22, I believe, when he got drafted.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild to me. Dang, I almost feel like we should have started with the West just so we could talk about this when we got to New York.
Damn, Malcolm Brogdon. Yeah, shout out Celtics legend though. Blazers legend as well, I guess. But yeah, no. Yeah, kind of a shocker there. Yeah, I'm gonna be going with the Grizzlies here as my number
Okay,
11
yeah, yeah.
seed. Like Bruce, tricky evaluation. I definitely floated the idea around of having them as a playing team, maybe even a playoffs team. Injuries are certainly a concern, especially they're already sort of mounting up in that front court, like Bruce discussed. So yeah, that's a bit of a concern for me. And then overall, I mean, the availability of John Morant is a massive concern for me. But when John Morant and Jaren Jackson have played together, the results are undeniable, and they've truly been a clear playoff team in the West. I mean, this was a team that was a top three seed for most of the season, and then they just plummeted and fell to that eight seed in the second half of last season. But yeah, I mean, trading Desmond Bain definitely like raised my eyebrows with this team. I was like, whoa, are they about to go into a rebuild? And like, I kind of see them potentially going into that rebuild. They have a boatload of first round picks. I think they kind of realize this core is probably maxed out, and I could potentially see them as like a rebuild candidate. I could also just see them being better than a lot of people are expected. So really tricky evaluation. Ultimately, I landed at number 11. Other than like seeing Ja play and hopefully be fully healthy, I'm super excited to see what year two looks like from Jalen Wells and what a rookie season looks like from Cedric Coward because he was one of my favorite prospects in the draft. So I do think that's another thing with this team. They have a lot of young talent. I could list a bunch of guys. So yeah, I mean, I could see them going into that rebuilding phase just because they have so much young talent. I don't want to just go over all of them because there's a lot to discuss really, and this organization is really really smart in my opinion. I think Zach Kleiman is one of the best GMs in the league, and I could see him potentially leaning in towards that rebuild. Especially, he just has a real nice eye for talent, and he's been able to find so many diamonds in the rough for this team. So yeah, I'm interested to see what this Grizzlies season looks like. I think they'll probably be a pretty fun watch, but I could definitely see them sort of pulling the plug in this core. Yeah, moving on to our number 10 seed. Who do you guys got as your first team in the play-in?
So this is where the bias ends for the stream for me. The Suns have gotten to 10th. That's the furthest I can put them. Ultimately, I do think the Grizzlies are a little bit better, but like I said, with the injuries, I think the Suns will be a little bit healthier. Even though the Suns already have injuries come into the season with Jalen Green and etc., I do think, like Elie said, we're going to see the best of Devin Booker, and that Devin Booker, I think, is going to be averaging, if not close to 30 points this season for this Suns team. I think he's going to be really, really effective on both sides of the ball as a playmaker, as a scorer, as a shot creator, and really being able to command this offense for this team. I'm very excited to see what direction that leads into because towards the end of last season, we got to see that with the Durant and Beal injuries, and it actually started to look like Book could control this team once again. And I think a lot of Suns fans do want to see that. I do think they made a lot of great additions. Obviously, the front court is still a question mark because, like you mentioned, Eamon, Mark Williams hasn't been able to stay healthy, hasn't even gotten any preseason burn with the Phoenix Suns so far, and Malawach is still a rookie. And as we know, with centers, specifically ones that learned how to play basketball just a couple seasons ago, it obviously is going to take them a little bit of time to pick up speed. So I'm okay with winning that, and that still is a question mark. But young guys like Ryan Dunn, I expect to take a big leap. Oso Ighodaro is probably the highest player I am on this entire team. He is going to be my hidden gem for the Suns because I think with them having the unavailability of Mark Williams and still dealing with Malawach, he's going to get to that thriving. And Jordan Ott, their new head coach, who they just hired, worked with the Cavs, and he loved using double big lineups over there. And I think the Suns are going to see that come into fruition with some times in Oso Ighodaro giving him some big moments. Dillon Brooks, I think, is a great addition. The draft picks they hit on are nice. Ultimately, though, I do think they obviously still are a step behind in this Western Conference. And yeah, the bias might come into play putting them in 10th, but that's where I got them. Just making the play and squeaking in. And I do think their win total is egregiously low. It is 31.5. And even though you might not think that the Suns might make the play in or make that, I do think they get over those 31 wins.
Uh, Man, I mean, my 10 seed, I almost feel weird putting them this low. I actually do feel pretty good about their outlook to finish a little bit higher than where I have them. But for me, I got San Antonio at 10. I like their team a lot though. Like I think, I mean, I'm a huge Wemby fan. I feel like everybody's a huge Wemby fan. I feel like obviously with them getting Luke Cornett in the offseason, I mean, I think that was a great acquisition for them. Give them another established big man next to Victor Wembanyama. And I mean, obviously, I liked them getting Dylan Harper. Like, I think there's so much to like about that team. And I feel like I could probably be talked into putting them at number 9. But the reason I have them at number 10 is because they still have a point guard logjam they need to figure out. And I mean, I'm also not too sold necessarily on how their system's going to look with a new head coach. I'm already blanking on his name, but the replacement for Greg Popovich.
Mitch Johnson.
Mitch Johnson, that's right. I don't know. I mean, they're a team that I think could be a lot better than, like I said before, a lot better than where I'm putting them. I just feel like they have a lot of obstacles that they kind of need to overcome. And I feel like for that reason, I just can't put them, especially in a conference this stacked. I feel like I can't really put them much higher than where they are. Like I said, I could see them being the number 9 seed, but in my opinion, that's probably the highest they can be right now. I think their long term outlook is incredible, but I think for this upcoming season, this is where I have them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely valid. I mean, I understand it. I think a lot of people probably subscribe to like the same theory as you, and I've seen them around this like 9-10 range a lot. Personally, I'm drinking the Spurs Kool-Aid, and I might be way too high on them. So we'll get to them in a bit. At number 10, this is where I got Portland, another team I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. a little bit. This seems like a little bit high, but I really, really do buy into how they finished last season, being one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I think that trend is bound to continue. I think we're going to see an absolutely monster second year from Donovan Clinton, especially on the defensive end of the court. I think he has all defensive upside. As a second year player, I liked Brennan Injru as that veteran presence, but I also think he's just going to be a nice connected playmaker, spot up shooter type of guy. And as we've seen as Celtics fans, he still performs at an extremely high level on defense. So I think he's a perfect fit for this team's style of play and identity. And yeah, I mean the offensive concerns are definitely valid, and they definitely don't have that like clear cut top guy right now. With that being said, Denny Avdia has been one of the guys that I'm just like irrationally way too high on, and he's just been one of my favorite players in the league for the last few years. And I do kind of buy into how he closed last season. He was averaging like 23, like 8 and 5 or something. I don't know if he's going to produce those exact same numbers, but I think he's going to be a legit like 20 point a game scorer for this team. He's already like a front runner for most improved player. So I'm buying into that leap, and then internal improvements from guys like Shaden Sharp, even Scoot Henderson. I know he's starting the season injured, but I think once he returns, he's going to have a really nice season. And yeah, ultimately, my belief in this team's defense. Tumani Kamara is another guy I got to throw out who just perfectly fits this team's defensive identity. So I think they truly have with him and Clinton, maybe Holiday, but he's a little older. They have like three all defensive caliber players. I think this is going to be one of the league's best defenses, and with the internal growth that I'm counting on from guys like Denny, Shaden, and Scoot, I think this is going to be a playing team that's going to surprise a lot of people. Yeah, maybe a little too high on them. I even hesitated. I almost put them at 9. But yeah, I'm really excited to watch. This is going to be one of my favorite League Pass teams, one of my favorite late night watches. So yeah, who did you guys have as your number 9 team?
I have the Dallas Mavericks coming in at the ninth spot here, and I feel like they really lucked out, obviously, with the Luka Doncic deal. I feel like if they didn't get the number one overall pick, we'd be talking a lot differently about this Dallas Mavericks team heading into this season. But with them getting Cooper Flag, kind of can't really tank them completely. They did obviously make the signing of D'Angelo Russell as well this free agency to supplement the ability of that creation and shot creation and scoring from Kyrie Irving, because obviously he's going to be out for the season. My one question with this Dallas Mavericks team is their front court because they are very stacked there. They have a lot of power forwards, a lot of centers, guys like Derek Lively, who's very solid. They just extended Daniel Gafford. They obviously have PJ Washington. They recently just extended Anthony Davis, Cooper Flag. And with a lot of teams seemingly that we've talked about earlier being weak in that front court position, I don't necessarily know how the Dallas Mavericks are going to kind of teeter that into the season. Maybe they will make some moves to really upgrade in some other needs that they do need offensively to create and score because they still are banking on, a guy in Jaden Hardy to kind of live up to those expectations over there. But I feel for the Dallas Mavericks coming into this ninth spot, this is kind of the middle of the road, and that's where I kind of see them. I do feel like some people are higher than them on than 9. I feel like some people are lower on them than 9, but I feel like this is kind of the perfect spot for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into it when they come up for me. I'm actually a lot higher on Dallas than that, but I don't know. I just feel like they're still kind of catching flack for the Luka Doncic trade, and I'm not gonna say that was the right call or not. Also, not gonna say if it wasn't, so how much I say this, I'm not gonna say that it wasn't, you know, non-coincidence or anything, but besides that, I'm actually pretty high on Dallas's offense and what they can do on both sides of the ball. I'm very interested to see how they will do in their first season together in this new era. But for now, my number 9 seed, this is where I have Memphis. I just feel like, I mean, they've been, in theory, on paper, one of the best teams in the West for the past few seasons. They just haven't been healthy. Obviously, losing Desmond Bain is tough, and I don't think that's a small loss in that trade. Yeah, they're already dealing with injuries, and I feel like that's going to limit or lower their ceiling, which is why I don't have them higher than they are. But I just feel like even with the injuries they're currently dealing with, I still think they're a talented enough team to at least be a playing team. And again, it kind of goes back to I just feel like their ceiling is higher than most of the teams that I had below them, and I just have more I guess trust in what they can do, even given their injury concerns. So I'm gonna have them at number 9, but again, I could definitely see them being. I definitely could see them flipping with San Antonio, kind of like I said before. But that's for now where I have them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I could definitely see Memphis being a little bit higher than I placed them. Like Bruce, though, I ended up going with the Mavs at number 9. I think defensively, this team is going to be really, really good. And I think that's really where you have to buy into this team is on that defensive end of the ball. When you look at Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, and then Cooper Flagg, who's a really good defender himself, and then even PJ Washington, this team is loaded in terms of their front court defense, and I think that's going to be their biggest strength throughout the season. At the same time, I'm a little bit hesitant with this team from a perimeter shot creation standpoint, and I think that's just too much for me to bump them ahead of some of these teams in the playoffs. Obviously, in the East, this is a playoff team, but in the West, I think they're just going to miss out on the playoffs just because of that lack of shot creation from the perimeter. Looks like they're going to run Cooper Flag at point guard. Should be a lot of fun. Do I think that's going to lead to a lot of wins and a great offense? No, not entirely. I think it's gonna be super fascinating to watch. But like, despite Cooper Flag being genuinely one of the most impressive draft prospects I've seen, I don't think he's ready to like run an NBA offense and be that like primary perimeter shot creator just yet. I think he's his the main selling point for me with Flag was just like he's a do it all win, and putting him into that role where he's like the team's main ball handler is a little bit concerning to me. With that being said, they do have a ton of size across the board, and I think they could lean into that, and that could be an advantage. Ton of versatility. D'Angelo Russell's there, so maybe he ends up being the starting point guard as Kyrie's rehabbing from the torn ACL injury. But personally, based off what I've seen from D'Angelo Russell, especially last season, I don't trust him to be that primary creator, primary playmaker either, and a little bit concerned there. I mean, even in his prime, I wasn't the biggest D'Lo guy, and it seems like he's kind of declining, especially last season. Wasn't super impressive. And then they just don't have much guard depth outside of that. So I think that's what holds me back with this team a little bit. But yeah, still a super fun team. Should be a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be in the mix for the playoffs there. But yeah, who do you guys have as your first playoff team with that number 8 seed?
So these two teams are very close in area and they are also very close in age. Therefore, I have them tossy-turvy. But with this team already dealing with one of their major players being out for the start of the season, I have to go with the Los Angeles Lakers coming in at the 8th spot here. LeBron dealing with sciatica right now is just not great for the Los Angeles Lakers, and regardless if that's how they're team building or whatever, starting off the season without LeBron and having really no timetable as well for how when he's going to be able to come back is just not great. Regardless if you have Luka Doncic, regardless of how young this team is looking to be better, they still have some glaring holes within that wing room, specifically losing Dorian Finney-Smith, and they added Jake LaRavia, who could still be a solid wing defender. But I think the investment of going a little bit younger can kind of put them closer towards the bottom than kind of really banking in on them and going all in with LeBron. They still have the question marks at that starting center spot because I do not trust DeAndre Ayton still at that starting center. And if you watch the preseason game, I know it is preseason, and the Suns have a lot more to play for and gain for without all their starters. But with their third strings, they beat the Los Angeles Lakers with Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves last night, which just goes to show me that this team just isn't as deep as I think they are, and I think that they're still going to have issues where they had last season. So therefore, I do think, even though they were a top team last year, I think they fall a little bit from graces with them getting a little bit older, and they fall in the 8th slot here.
So I actually initially had the Lakers a little bit higher, but I actually also have them at number 8 because listen, I'm no doctor. I'm not going to act like I know everything, but this injury isn't a minor one for LeBron. Maybe it's not like it's not going to keep him on the shelf for the whole season, but I feel like there is concern that this is going to be a lingering issue, especially given his age. And so that's obviously going to limit the Lakers' ceiling. I am very excited to see what Luka can do in his first full season with the team. And I kind of said this before. I'm very much a fan of the idea of DeAndre Ayton, but once it gets into the thick of it, I really don't see his acquisition being a big deal for the Lakers. And obviously losing Dorian Finney-Smith isn't great either. So I think I would have them higher if LeBron wasn't dealing with the injury that he is, but I can't just ignore that. And so for that reason, especially like we keep saying, in a conference this stacked, you need to be as healthy as possible. You need to be on your A game as much as possible. And with LeBron being out for who knows how long, I just feel like it's going to make it much more difficult for the Lakers to finish higher than that.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I have the Lakers just a bit higher, so we'll get to them in a second. Here I went with the Golden State Warriors as my number 8 team. It's tough, because they looked really, really good with Jimmy Butler, to close the season last year. But when you're starting four guys above the age of 35, that's just always going to be a massive concern for me, regardless of the talent of this group. I mean, four proven NBA champ, or I guess Jimmy Butler isn't, but like four proven championship level players. Steph Curry is still top 10 player in the league, in my opinion, one of my favorite players in the league. But I just think it's tough for older teams to sustain the rigors of an 82 game season. I think that's going to really hurt the Warriors given their lack of depth. I hated their offseason, quite frankly. I thought Al Horford, nice move, obviously. I think he's going to be a perfect fit with that system. But I just hated how the whole like Kaminga thing played out, and I think they should have just tried to find a sign and trade for him. And I think that's going to sort of loom over the Warriors a little bit this season. And yeah, I mean, just their lack of depth, I think, is really going to hurt them, given that they're an older team, despite really how good they looked on both sides of the ball last season once they got Jimmy Butler. With that being said, if they were an East team, I would have them as like a clear like top 5 seed. So it's not that they're not talented or anything. I think they'd be really tough out in the playoffs as well, just given their experience. But yeah, for a regular season team, I think they're gonna be that 8 seed. And I mean, we've seen this Warriors team really be in the play-in for the past 2 seasons, and then before that, I think they were a 6 seed. So it's not crazy to think that they're gonna be within the play-in in a loaded Western Conference. But yeah, who did you guys have as your number 17?
So this is where I have the Warriors slightly ahead of the Los Angeles Lakers, and for the similar reasons, just the ability for them to have all these all-star players and be able to thrive, I think is going to be very valuable. I also like some of the additions they made. I think Al Horford is great. I think DeAnthony Melton, bringing him back, he had some great success before he went down with an injury for them. So I think he's going to be another solid creator. But like you said, Eamon, the depth there in this for this team is just not really there. And for the West, there's like the UNC squads, and then there's like the really young squads that are really at top of the Western Conference, I kind of feel. And as we've seen with the last couple of seasons and even indicating of last year's NBA Finals, fast pace is going to excel in this league, and playing at that fast pace is going to thrive, and having those younger bodies able to run up and down the court is going to be viable. And for the Warriors, they don't really have that. Added on to the fact, like you mentioned, the Jonathan Kuminga situation is just a patching of a band-aid for next season. I really don't think helps them find any solvents for their rotation. I still think even with having Quinton Post, they could still use an additional rebounder in that front court, could still use another veteran 3-and-D switchable guy. So we could see the Warriors use that contract as a tradable asset this trade deadline or next year. But if they still have Jonathan Kuminga kind of going into the playoffs, I think still think he kind of coincides a lot with Jimmy Butler and what he does for this team, and I feel like it's just an added clunk. So I feel like for the Warriors, having them at 7 is a little bit justified. But like you said, I could still see them being a little bit higher just for the fact that they have Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Al Horford, four quality veterans that know what it does to take to win games at the end of the day on the basketball court.
So I'm actually a little bit higher on Golden State than both of you guys are. So I actually don't have the Warriors here. This is where I have the Mavericks. And to be honest, I kind of thought about putting them even a little bit higher. I just feel like this team is going to exceed expectations. I'm a big fan of the roster they have. I think Anthony Davis and Derek Lively in the front court is disgusting. And having obviously Clay Thompson and seeing what he can do alongside Cooper Flag is very intriguing. And I love the idea. I don't know how much they're going to actually utilize it, but I love the idea of having Cooper Flag potentially play point guard, even though he wasn't a point guard at Duke often. He kind of showed that he could at least take over that responsibility a little bit, being the lead ball handler and running pick and rolls and things like that. So I'm really interested to see if that's something that they do consistently. I think as we all know, Jason Kidd was there for a young Giannis Antetokounmpo, and uh, that's kind of the role he gave him. I'm just saying we could probably see something similar out of Cooper Flag his rookie year. And if they do, I think that gives the Mavericks a huge advantage on both sides of the ball. So I'm excited to see what they do. Either way, I think they have a very solid roster. And I think having a full season of, well, in theory, a full season of Anthony Davis, we'll see how healthy he is. But at least having him to start the season, I think is going to put them in a really good spot. And so for me, I think they're a pretty easy play-in team. And I could actually see them being a legitimate playoff team when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes a lot of sense, and I've seen a lot of people sort of on the same page as you. We'll get to the community rankings later, but a lot of people are high in the Mavericks, so I definitely get it, and I think it is a fairly easy pitch. It's just sort of in the West, somebody has to get left off. Number 7 is where I had the Lakers here. You guys already talked about them, but yeah, sort of on the same page. I think the LeBron injury at 40 years old, he's going to be 41 in the middle of the season, a little bit of a concern. And the DeAndre Ayton move on paper makes a lot of sense. And I think it was sort of the best they could do to fill that center void. At the same time, I think Aiton is a guy, especially defensively, he's only as good as the talent around him. And I think the Lakers' defense surrounding Aiton is absolutely terrible. I think the Dorian Finney Smith loss is going to be way bigger than anyone is talking about. And I think, yeah, that's sort of where my lack of confidence comes in with this team. I did hesitate. I had them as high as 5 and ultimately as low as 7. But yeah, with the injury, I ended up putting them a little bit further back. I obviously love the Luca aspect of this team, and Luca, LeBron, and Reeves were an amazing trio to close last season, and they were really solid on both ends of the floor once they got Luca, despite his defensive concerns. But I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back just based off some injury concerns with LeBron, and then yeah, the defensive concerns. It's really significant. I love Marcus Smart as a Celtics fan. I just can't trust him to stay healthy at this point. So yeah, I think the Lakers are going to be a little bit disappointing, but I could also see them just because they do have LeBron and Luca and then Austin Reeves, just the elite perimeter shot creation there, the playmaking. I could see them proving us wrong in a pretty significant way and maybe even being a top 3 seed in this conference. So yeah, a wide range of outcomes for the Lakers, I believe. But yeah, who did you guys have as your number 6 seed?
So this is where I think I don't know if Eamon has them here, but this is where my sipping of the Kool-Aid ends with the Spurs. But I have them at 6, even though I am very high on them. I do think there are some teams in the Western Conference just a little bit deeper, but I do think a full year of De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama is going to absolutely be must-see TV on League Pass for me because the pick and roll combinations and the fast-paced play that they're going to be able to play is going to be absolutely insane. They also really, really thrived in adding into that front court. Their biggest issue was when Victor Wembanyama was off the court. They addressed that, bringing in Luke Cornett, as we all know, is one of the best underrated backup big men in the league. I think is going to work and able to complement Wemby in some lineups. And then they also added Kelly Olynyk, another former Boston Celtic that we all very know very proudly, who I think also adds what Luke Cornett can do at a shot making ability, but does it a lot better. And we haven't seen that from Luke Cornett in the last couple of years of his career. So I do think having both of those style bigs behind Victor Wembanyama, a defensive rebounding one that can make some smart passes, but also one that can let it fly and play on the perimeter is going to be key for their ability to run these rotations. They also have that deep guard room with Rookie of the Year last year in Stephon Castle, number 2 overall pick in Dylan Harper, with De'Aaron Fox, which I think could be a little bit crowded for the future, but I think for this season isn't going to be as detrimental. And then their wing room, a little bit weaker, but Keldon Johnson has had a pretty good preseason and I think is going to look a little bit better within this rotation with playing alongside guys in Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox, those kind of playmakers and initiators. So I do have the Spurs a little bit higher coming in at 6th here in the West. And like I said, a very fun, exciting team for the League Pass watchers out there.
Man, you guys definitely making me overthink my San Antonio pick a little bit. I mean, I love the Spurs and what they're doing, so I hope I'm wrong. I don't know. I kind of feel like at least that's what my gut said. They can't be too high, but hopefully I'm wrong. But for my number 6 seed, this is I've had like 4 different teams in this spot. This is such a hard spot to really judge. I ultimately went with the Warriors. I think Golden State here makes sense. Obviously they're like a million years old, and whether they're going to be able to really be consistent and stay healthy throughout the whole season, we'll see. But I love the Al Horford pickup for them in theory. I love that they were able to get Jonathan Kuminga back, and they obviously made some other kind of lesser talked about signings or deals. They got D'Anthony Melton back, and I just feel like they have a very interesting team. I'm excited to see what they could do with the full season of Jimmy Butler because I feel like it's kind of easier to forget how good they were after they traded for Jimmy Butler, and to have a full season of that, I definitely think bodes well for them. I don't know if I necessarily put them in the championship contending tier, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do establish themselves as so. For that reason, I'm gonna put the Warriors here, but they're another team that I could see being better than where I have them and worse than where I have them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like the West, there's just such a wide range of outcomes for so many of these teams. I ended up going with the same as Bruce, having the Spurs as my number 6 seed. Yeah, I'm really drinking the Kool-Aid with this team, as I said before. But I think for me, it comes down to a couple things. Victor Wembanyama entering his third season, I'm just expecting another massive leap, especially offensively, especially with some more talent around him. I think that's going to be huge. I think he's going to be like a first team All NBA level guy. I don't know if he makes it. It's obviously super competitive, but I think he's going to have that type of season. I think we're going to see a lot more from him offensively. And then De'Aaron Fox, I think having a full season of that pairing is going to be massive. We barely saw it after the deadline. I mean, Wemby went down with the blood clot thing, and then they shut Fox down with the hand or thumb injury, whatever it was. But I think on paper that fit is just really perfect. I mean, Fox is a guy that can really push the pace. I think that's going to benefit Wemby. He's a really underrated playmaker, and then he's that true like second option level scorer. So I think having Wemby next to like a top 25 level player, which he hasn't played anywhere close to as talented as a player of Fox, I think is going to be huge. I mean, this is a Spurs team that, despite Wemby going down with the blood clot injury, they won 34 games, which is kind of like a decent number in the West. And I think they're going to make like a 10-15 win jump here. And then, yeah, as Bruce mentioned, I think the additions of Kelly Olynyk and Luke Cornett are going to be absolutely massive for this team to maintain a high level defense while Wemby's off the court. When Wemby's on the court, we know the Spurs team is legitimately one of the best defenses in the league. I think it's fair to sort of be concerned about the pairing of Fox, Harper, and Castle, three guards that can't really shoot. I think that's my one hesitation with this team. But at the same time, if you look at what Wemby's played with throughout his career, I think it's a better problem to have than, especially in his first season when he just had like no real guards next to him. So yeah, super high on this team. I did bump them up after the LeBron injury a little bit. I was debating with them and the Lakers, but yeah, I could see this team being an outright playoff team and just absolutely one of the teams I'm most excited to watch. But yeah, who did you guys have as your number 5 seed?
I had the definition of the Unk squad in the Los Angeles Clippers as my 5 seed. Man, oh man. There's a team that's saying no youth, no problem. It is the Los Angeles Clippers. They are investing into veterans. They are going all in for this championship push for these 2 seasons. And I have to say, for a team that I thought after losing Paul George was going to be towards the bottom of the Western Conference, they have really changed my mind on their direction and identity. I do think, obviously, Ivica Zubac was a big, vital part for their success last season, and I still think he is going to be this year. Arguably, shouldn't be arguably a top 5 big in the NBA, where he is so vital on the defensive end. They also added some great pieces, like we mentioned, bringing in John Collins, another additional rebounder to help out in their front court. Brooke Lopez, who I think working with John Collins in that secondary unit is just chef's kiss of a perfect matchup. Then you got guys like Derek Jones Jr. still on this roster, Nicholas Batum, who just doesn't seem to miss on this Clippers team. I just think that overall, veteran-wise, they are just built. Now, the one concern is the injury history. Obviously, Kawhi is getting older and has had injury history in the past. Harden has. They now have Bradley Beal, who's been injury riddled his last couple of seasons with the Suns. So those questions still remain in play for me. But I do think overall they have a good offensive squad. They have a good defensive unit. They have multiple players that can work within their starting unit or bench unit to be switchable. And they have a great head coach in Ty Lue. They just, unfortunately, just don't have the youth to keep up with some of these other teams. So that's why they have them at fifth.
Yeah, I mean, my number 5 seed, I didn't feel, I still feel like I'm ranking them a little bit too low, even as the 5 seed, but this is where I have Minnesota. I don't know. I think they're obviously a great team, and I mean, they just made it to back conference finals. That's not a coincidence. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they make it back. This is another one of those classic deals where I feel like even though they're a fantastic team, they can do it all. They can provide value on both sides of the ball and really every aspect of the game. It just comes down to I feel like the other or the other four teams ahead of them for me either have more star power or they have more depth or whatever it might be. They each just have that one little thing that I think makes them stand out a little bit more than Minnesota, but I'm excited to see what Anthony Edwards can do this season, see what type of leap he makes. And I feel like overall, I mean, they're going to have a successful season most likely. I just feel like it was hard for me to put them above some of the other teams I have above them.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. I have Minnesota just a bit higher. But yeah, I mean, if you look at specifically them compared to the Clippers, who were my number 5 seed, I think it's fair to put the Clippers above them based on the fact that they clearly improved this offseason while Minnesota did not, and that they last season finished above the Timberwolves. So I think that's definitely valid. The Clippers for me is like the only like older team in the West that I'm like truly buying into, I would say. And that's just because they have so much depth compared to the Warriors and Lakers. I really love their offseason. I think, I mean, obviously they got my guy Chris Paul, so I'm a little bit biased there, but I think just having another ball handler behind James Harden is going to be super nice, but that wasn't even close to like their best addition this offseason. I think Bradley Beal is potentially an upgrade over Norman Powell. If not, he's a super similar level of player. And then really, really bolstering that big man depth, I think, is the main thing that makes me super confident in this team. We've seen how Harden thrives next to, big men and lob threats like that. So I think getting John Collins and Brooke Lopez is going to be massive. Lopez more of like that 3-point shooting stretch big type. But yeah, I think that's going to be massive, and I think their depth is really going to carry them. And then the other thing, Kawhi Leonard, he only played like 30 something games last season, so they were a 5 seed without that, and potentially him being healthy for a full season, big if. Especially with like the scandal thing going on. But I think he'll play probably more than 30 games. It's the first time in a while he's been healthy to start the season, so that's definitely an encouraging sign. Obviously they have championship aspirations. Will they reach those aspirations? I'm not totally sure. I think they're a notch below like true title contenders, but I can kind of buy into this team for like a couple years, and I think they're definitely going to be at the top end of that West. Just sort of falling short of some of those aspirations. But yeah, we can move on to who you guys had at number 4.
So I have the Timberwolves here, and they were kind of tossy turvy with the Clippers for me. The only reason that I gave the Timberwolves an edge, and this was just recently I gave them this edge, was due to the fact that I see the internal growth really thriving within this Timberwolves team. Guys like Rob Dillingham, I feel very high on. I'm potentially taking that leap with Mike Conley getting a little bit older. Terrence Shannon has also been pretty solid shot creator for their team as well. They did lose a vital part in their defense and switchability in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which a guy in Shannon's going to have to live up to be. But I do think that the Timberwolves are going to be very effective with Anthony Edwards. Julius Randle seemingly fit a lot better than I thought he would within that unit, specifically in the playoffs, and I still think is going to be a solid second option working along Anthony Edwards. The main concern I have here with the Timberwolves, and I don't think it's going to apply this season, but I think it's for next season and after, is the age of Rudy Gobert and obviously how long he is going to be with this team, with him being just recently getting an extension, not a max contract, but a little bit closer to that. It could be viewed as a negative asset in which the Timberwolves have to give up some draft capital or maybe have to complicate things to move off a contract like that to give more freedom to Naz Reid. But ultimately, I do think this season that's not an issue. I still think they're going to be a top one of the best in the Western Conference. And I think last year really saw that rise in the second half of the year. And I think we're going to see that throughout this season comparative just to one side of the ball or one side of the season in last year. So that's why I have the Timberwolves at 4.
Yeah, so I mean, this is where I have the Clippers. I feel like we're kind of all in the same boat that the Clippers and Timberwolves are interchangeable. I think the Clippers, yeah, I kind of agree with Eamon. They're kind of one of the few, I guess, old teams. Yeah, I'm really buying into. I just think on paper, they're they have so much depth and they also have such high upside that I just feel like if everything goes right for them, like they should be able to make a deep playoff run and potentially make it to the NBA Finals. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to predict that, but they definitely have a very solid team. They can kind of do, they can kind of make an impact on both sides of the ball. I mean, I'm interested to kind of see how it all works. It's obviously in a different situation, but I'm excited about the Chris Paul James Harden reunion. I'm excited to see how that turns out. Back to comparing it back to their Houston days. So I like the Clippers a lot, and kind of like Bruce was saying, they have a really good coach in Ty Lue, who I feel like maybe I wasn't bought into even a few years ago, but I definitely think he's kind of earned my respect, and I've changed my mind on him a lot over the past couple of seasons. So I'm pretty high on what they can do. I think they've got really high upside, and if everything goes right, I definitely think they're going to be one of the better teams in the West.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that makes sense. We're all sort of on the same page with this, as you said, Elie. Like Bruce, I did have the Minnesota Timberwolves here. Just a team that really thrives on both ends of the floor. I think there's a lot of buzz around how are they going to replace Nikhil Alexander Walker, which I think is totally reasonable. I'm super confident in Terrence Shannon Jr. though, so I don't think that's going to be as big of a problem as a lot of people are talking about. When you look at Terrence Shannon Jr., he's a guy that can really attack the rim at will, versatile defender, solid playmaker as well. So I think he's going to fill that spot quite nicely, and he's 25, so he's a lot more polished than your typical second year player. Jalen Clark is another guy that I think is going to get some pretty significant minutes with this team, especially just how pesky he is on the ball as a defender. And he's also very just disruptive off the ball. So yeah, super fun defensive player. If he can maintain his level of shooting from last season, which isn't close to in line with what he did from his college tenure at UCLA, I think he's going to have a really, really nice role with this team. So between those two, I think they're going to be able to fill the Nikhil Alexander Walker void nicely. I think the big question for me though is the point guard spot here. Mike Conley just turned 38. I think we've seen him decline significantly as a scorer, self-creator, and then just being a smaller guard in defense, he's always going to be that sort of target, especially as he's aged. So what can you get out of Conley, and then what role can Dillingham play in his second season is going to be really the swing factor for this team. Rob Dillingham's a guy who I'm super high on. At the same time, smaller guards typically take a while to develop, and I do have some concerns, especially how the preseason's played out so far. He was shooting like below 30% against NBA teams in the preseason, which to me is a little bit concerning. Can he sort of orchestrate that offense like Conley does? Because they're trying to get him to buy into that like playmaking role. I think that's a little bit of a concern. But yeah, regardless, I think this is a team that on both ends of the floor is going to really thrive. And Anthony Edwards can take another leap in year 6. I think that's a huge factor with this team. And even guys like Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, I think there's some internal growth there. And then overall, you look at how slow they started last season. They did finish as a 6 seed, and it was really tough for them to integrate both Randall and Dante DiVincenzo early on. But now, with this team having a full year together under their belt and really closing the season on a strong note, finishing the year 17-4, I believe, and then only losing 2 games in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, I think they've shown enough, and I think that continuity is going to be super beneficial to them. With that being said, who do you guys have as your number 3 seed here?
So for number 3, I have the Houston Rockets, and they were kind of in debate with my number 2 team, but with them already having Fred VanVleet out for the entire season and losing one of their main offensive creators and scorers for this unit that we've seen in the past couple of years, that does, lower the expectations for me. Obviously, though, they made some huge acquisitions, bringing in Kevin Durant, getting rid of that Jalen Green kind of conundrum with Alperen Sengun, of who was going to be really competing to be that secondary scorer alongside Amen Thompson within this lineup. They ultimately lose Dylan Brooks as well, but still have the depth with guys like Tari Eason, and then bringing in, obviously, Dorian Finney-Smith. He's going to be out to start the year a little bit too, so that kind of hinders the Rockets as well, but I still think they are deep enough. They extended Jabari Smith as well, who could be a solid rebounder for their team. They have Steven Adams. They've got Clint Capella as well in free agency. I feel like this team is very deep and does have those pieces to fill out. And one piece that I really want to talk about is Reed Shepard, because I feel like a lot of people, because of last season, not him getting the burn being a number 3 overall pick, a lot of people have some skepticism with him going into the year. I may be a little bit higher than some people, but I think he's going to be maybe not a Fred VanVleet replacement, obviously, but someone that could still fill in that role for this team. I feel like a lot of people, even though VanVleet is a vital part of this offense, are taking that away and stripping that down and maybe ranking the Rockets a little bit lower. But I think Reed Shepard is going to prove it in his sophomore season that he was worthy of that number 3 overall pick and was worthy of even being a number 1 overall pick during those draft discussions just last season. And that's where I have the Rockets kind of feeling a little bit better, especially with Amen Thompson's rise as well.
Yeah, I also got Houston at 3. This is a team that I feel like before Van Vliet's injury, I was pretty confident in putting them at number 2. I do think that injury is going to make a big impact on them. I do like Reed Shepard a lot, and I mean, obviously, kind of like Bruce was saying, he didn't really get the best opportunity last year, but now he'll definitely have that, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm excited to see another season of Amen Thompson, and obviously, I'm excited to see what Kevin Durant can do with that team. I mean, this was a team, if I'm remembering right, that finished as the number 2 seed last year anyway, or last season anyway. So in theory, they only got better. I'm excited to see what they can do. I think I think 3, 2, and 1 in the West are a completely different tier, in my opinion, compared to the rest. Because I do look at Houston as a legitimate championship contender this season. So I could see them being higher than 3, but because of the teams I have above them, I feel like I can't really justify predicting that they will finish that high.
Yeah, I also have Houston here. I think we might run the table once again with our top three seeds. But yeah, I mean the Van Vliet injury is going to be pretty significant. At the same time, I think they have enough positional playmaking and positional size there to make up for that. I think they're going to really lean into their length and versatility. I think they might start Amen at point guard, which is going to be super interesting, and then just have like a lineup of like 6, 7, and up. And yeah, I think it's going to be super interesting. I think Thompson can take another step up. Şengün can take another step up. And then getting Kevin Durant as that true, like, established go-to scorer for this team is going to be really massive, which they sort of lacked last season. And I think that was a problem for them, especially late in games. So yeah, I think they're going to be really, really solid this season, obviously. And then the other thing I'd like to throw out is potentially trading for a point guard at the deadline. They can't do so right now due to like salary cap stuff. But I could see by the deadline them making a move for a point guard to fill that Van Vliet void and then getting right back to like true title contention. I think they are probably a trade away, but who knows? Maybe with their length and Thompson taking a leap as a playmaker, it won't even be necessary. So yeah, super interested to watch this team. I think they're going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, I think just being able to take another step up on offense with Durant there, and then being able to still maintain that elite defense that they had bodes well for them. And yeah, clear title contenders. I agree. Clear top three team in the West. But yeah, let's move on to our number two.
So that for me would be the Denver Nuggets. I have them coming just short, getting in the 2 seed. Nikola Jokic, as we all know, is just a dominant beast, the best player in the NBA, someone that is going to be in this MVP race, and has ultimately gotten a better squad around him this offseason. Even though the Nuggets had to part with their 2032 first round pick and send it to the Nets for Cam Johnson. I do feel like trading Michael Porter Jr. is just such a benefactor for this team, not only just helping them get out of those apron struggles and giving them some more financial flexibility for Christian Braun down the line, but also I think Cam Johnson just plays a very similar role to Michael Porter Jr., but even better as an off-ball creator, and I think is a better fit than Michael Porter Jr. is for this team. I do think adding Bruce Brown back as well, who had his most success with this Denver Nuggets team, is going to be very beneficial because the last seasons he's been on like the Raptors and the Pelicans. We haven't really seen the best out of Bruce Brown. We haven't seen the most competitiveness out of Bruce Brown, and I feel like we're going to get that back this season. And then also they have a bunch of young players as well, like Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther and stuff like that, guys that were towards the lower end of their rotation, but were trying to thrive and grow through this team. I think they're even going to see a little bit of bumps as well. Maybe not standout rotational guys, but guys that can fill in those blanks and be consistent wing players for this rotation. Some injuries do come into play or they do get tired. And I feel like this team is a lot deeper than a lot of people expect. Jamal Murray is going to continue to be better. And yeah, the Nuggets are at 2 for me.
Yeah, I also got Denver at 2. I mean, they were already a great team. I thought they had probably potentially the best offseason of any team this season. And I love that they reacquired Bruce Brown. I mean, like Bruce was saying, his best years were in Denver, and he did play a big role in that championship team a couple of years ago. So I think getting him back is going to be huge for them. I mean, there's really not much I think going against them. Obviously, they have Nikola Jokic, who maybe should have won MVP again this past season. But either way, I mean, that's a team that was also just one win away from beating the eventual NBA champions in the playoffs. And who knows what would happen if they did win that game. So I think the Nuggets have a great outlook for this season. And I think they're definitely going to be one of the top teams in the West.
Yeah, for sure. I also had the Nuggets here. I mean, Nikola Jokic, here's a guy who's been a three-time MVP without a very good supporting cast throughout his career. And I think this is the best supporting cast he's ever had. And yeah, we're just going to see another monster season from Jokic, but improving their depth is really massive. And then just overall having that stability of not firing your GM and head coach with 3 games before the playoffs is going to be big for them. But yeah, I love the Cam Johnson pickup. I think that's an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr. Bruce Brown should play a really nice role with this team as like that secondary ball handler off the bench. And then Jonas Valanciunas is by far and away the best backup big man of Jokic's career. So that paired with just improvements overall from their floor spacing, and then Jokic still being great, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray being really awesome players next to him. I don't see a world where this is in a top 3 seed, quite frankly. And yeah, like you said, Elie, this was a team that was 1 win away from knocking off the defending champs. And sort of with that in mind, and Jokic having the best supporting cast of his career, them not having that organizational dysfunction that they had last year, I'm personally picking them to win it all this year. I have the Nuggets over the Knicks in the finals. Bit of a hot take. I mean, the Thunder won 68 games and they won the championship and they're still super young. But I do think the Nuggets have what it takes to win it all and give Jokic a second championship. But yeah, let's just talk about the Thunder. We all had them at number 1, obviously, a super dominant team last year.
Yeah, just the best team in basketball, clearly one of the better defenses, won the NBA championship. Obviously, had some opportunities where they could have lost it, right? We're in game 7 versus the Pacers, where you could argue if Tyrese doesn't go down, they could lose that. We just talked about that important game versus the Denver Nuggets in game 7, but this team is still just completely dominant. Obviously, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. You got Jalen Williams continuing to rise. Chet Holmgren still continuing to develop. But then they have the guys like Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, those defensive veterans that play so integral to this team. And then Isaiah Joe is a pretty solid catch and shoot scorer. Aaron Wiggins, who saved basketball to all those Thunder fans, as we all know. This team is deep. They also got my favorite prospect in the draft class in Thomas Sorber. I know he will not be playing this season, as unfortunately he is dealing with a season-ending injury. But I think having that as potential depth, as a depth piece, if he does pan out, when Isaiah Hartenstein does get priced out of his contract, or maybe does stay his time too far for this Thunder team, is just great. And they, like we said, have the draft capital to fill in any need they want, can make any trade they want if they need to add to this roster throughout the season. It's just hard to look at this team and not say they are not the number 1 team in all basketball. So that's where I have the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a pretty clear no-brainer in my opinion, because on top of all of this, they were also the 1 seed 2 years ago. So like it's not even just they came out of nowhere, won the championship. Like they were the 1 seed or 2 seasons ago. Obviously, this past season they won it all. They're only getting better. And it kind of feels like we're talking about the Celtics from last year, but something that they really have going for them too is they have that continuity. They didn't make many, if any, real changes in the offseason. They're going to be rolling it out with the same exact team. And I mean, that's scary. They were the best team in basketball last season. They're more or less going to be the exact same team this season, if not better. I mean, to me, this is not only is this a no-brainer number 1 seed, but kind of like what we were all saying about Boston last year, they're probably the favorites to win it again. So we'll see if it does happen. We know that it hasn't happened. A team hasn't repeated since the Warriors did it in 2018, but the Thunder have a good chance to be that team to kind of break that streak this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this team is, we said it about Boston last year, but this team is truly positioned better than any team in recent memory to repeat as champions. They won 68 games last year, which is just absurd. It's one of the best regular seasons we've seen ever. I think they ended up having like top 3 net rating or something of all time. So yeah, just super dominant, incredible defense. The other thing I'd like to add on is that Chet Holmgren only played like 30-something games. So having Chet fully healthy for a season, they could maybe even push to that 70-win mark. I think that's going to be a little tougher in an improved Western Conference, but you never know. And this team is so young, they're only getting better and better. And yeah, just totally complete basketball team. Not much to add on there. I think just given that they won 68 games, and they maintained their entire championship core, you have to give them their respect and predict them to be the number 1 seed. So yeah, we're going to wrap up our predictions here before moving on to the community predictions that you guys submitted over on social media. We'll run through these real quick, and then I'll get your guys' biggest takeaway from them, and then we'll officially wrap up. So yeah, going back to the East, the community had the Nets as 15, the Bulls as 14, the Wizards as 13, the Hornets at 12, the Sixers at 11, the Heat at 10, the Celtics at 9, the Raptors at 8, the Pacers at 7, the Bucks at 6, the Pistons at 5, the Hawks at 4, and the Orlando Magic at 3, Knicks at 2, Cavs at 1. So, I mean, kind of similar to what we had. And then over in the West, Jazz at 15, Suns at 14, Kings at 13, Pelicans at 12, Blazers at 11, Grizzlies at 10, Spurs at 9, Warriors 8, Mavericks 7, Lakers 6, Clippers 5, Timberwolves 4, Rockets 3, Nuggets 2, and Thunder 1. Do you guys have any like major takeaways from that?
feel like both of those were pretty similar to what I said. Like I feel like mine specifically were like because I feel like with the West, especially the three of us kind of all like I feel like you guys had a similar prediction than and I kind of was a little bit different, but I feel like the community is kind of in agreement with what I'm saying. So that was my biggest take.
For me, it honestly would be the Suns being 14th once again. That might be my bias coming into play, but that I think is a little too criminally low. And then on the offensive end, once again, you guys were a little bit higher on them, but the Raptors being at 10, once again, I'm just not as confident in them. And then the Celtics being at 11. We were all, even though we were a little bit lower on the Celtics compared to the rest of us in the conference here, we were a little bit lower, a little bit higher on them, I think, comparative to rest. So those two teams for me in the East.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Pacer, I mean, it's an average, so it's kind of tough to figure, but I feel like Pacers being 2 spots above the Celtics is a little bit interesting to me. I can sort of see the rationale there. Other than that, I guess the Mavericks being in the playoffs definitely stands out. So community is a little higher in the Mavericks than the Spurs. But yeah, I think that makes sense. We're gonna wrap up here real quick pause so we can throw up our official stand-ins prediction so the viewers can see it if they're watching on YouTube or Spotify. So quick pause. Here are our final predictions before the season. Go ahead. Before we officially wrap up, I just want to give you guys a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Eamon, for having me on for this great discussion. You can find me over on YouTube at Swish City, where I do NBA kind of releases and stuff. I'm getting bought into the season with that. And then for my writing, you can check me out on Bright Side of the Sun, where I write for the Phoenix Suns, detailing the season. Obviously, it was a little higher than them compared to Elie and Eamon, but I'm excited for them to get into the season. And there'll be a lot of discussion, at least with the Suns and their new direction. So if you want to stay tuned, definitely check that out.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us on again. Always a fun time. You can follow me. You can watch. You can read my stuff at 8points9seconds.com. It's the Indiana Pacers site for FanSided. I am the site expert. You can also find me on athlonsports.com. I mostly do NBA, NFL, and MLB content.
Sweet. Appreciate you, boys. Looking forward to the season and have to have you guys on again. So, yeah, appreciate it. Take care, boys. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Cassels Cast. Once again, huge shout out to Bruce and Elie for coming on the show again. I'll catch you guys on the next episode.